For some inexplicable reason, over 20 years after the release of the 2001 Best Picture-winning Gladiator, director Ridley Scott decided to return to the world of ancient Rome and develop a sequel. Initial reactions to the announcement were harsh, with many wondering not only why now, but why altogether. As casting news started to filter out and more leaked set pieces were drip-fed to the masses, confidence started to slowly build. Though the release of the first trailer sparked some controversy over its song choice, anticipation steadily grew, with box office projections being surprisingly optimistic. Now that the initial release is behind us and we've had some time to reflect, I can confidently say that I liked Gladiator II. But I only found it to be good at best, not great, and certainly not coming anywhere near the original. So why is that? What worked, what didn't, and what could they have done differently? Let's find out. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and movie lovers of all kinds, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, I'm going to be discussing my in-depth thoughts on Gladiator II and how I feel it could have been better. Before I hop into the actual video itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have carefully curated playlists for every type of video I do. Be it video essays like this one, ranking videos, top 10s versus videos, and so much more, there is a playlist for all. So I encourage you to explore the channel, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And if by some chance you don't, then feel free to suggest something you might like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Alright, the best place to start, so we don't have to backtrack in order to connect everything, is by discussing the things I liked about Gladiator II. And spoiler alert, it's actually a pretty extensive list because I do genuinely feel Gladiator II gets a lot right. Firstly is the action. One of my only gripes with the original Gladiator is that the majority of the action is very lackluster. The camera is often zoomed in way too much, there are too many swiping shots, too many quick cuts, and we don't truly get to appreciate the stunt work or practical effects on display. It's not awful, there's certainly worse out there, plus there are some that are still shot extremely well, like the final fight between Maximus and Commodus. I felt the complete opposite about Gladiator II. Right from the opening, I knew they were going to nail it. The first big battle sequence not only sets the tone for the movie, but set my expectations for the rest of the movie, and it just kept delivering. Again, that opening is just chef's kiss. Whether it's the epic sweeping shots of the catapults in action, the close quarters combat on the wall, or the devastation from the ships or within the stronghold from the catapults and the plethora of bows and arrows. It was epic. Then we get into the sequences actually set within the Colosseum. Whether it was the gladiators taking on the monkeys, the rhino, other gladiators, the Kingsguard, or that wicked ship battle. I thought it was all immaculately executed. Violent, brutal, well shot, thrilling, and expertly choreographed. Some folks might disagree. I know lots of people online felt the film looked too digital, or the cinematography was lazy, so maybe I've become just too easy to please. But I shamelessly enjoyed every action sequence in this movie. Next up, and probably even more obvious than the last one, is the cast and performances. There are some powerhouse performances in here, and others that might not be as strong as they could have been, but are still memorable nonetheless. The obvious standout, the one that everyone's been talking about, and really the only one that comes even remotely close to what Crow and Phoenix displayed in the original, is Denzel Washington. He's incredible. There's really no other way to put it. Like, that is a movie star. He steals every single scene he's in, and he commands the screen with every line he delivers. Every facial expression speaks 1,000 words. It's one of his best in recent years, if you ask me. I just genuinely can't emphasize enough just how spectacular he was in this. Now on to who is the actual star of the show, or is supposed to be at least, and is instead likely the most controversial and divisive part of the movie. Paul Mescal as Lucius/Hanno. Personally, I liked him. Didn't love him, but liked him, and naturally I'll explain why. The most common complaint about the movie, or at least one of the most common complaints, is that Mescal is miscast as our lead. If you ask me, there are two key reasons for that. One, people keep comparing his performance to the powerful performance gifted to us by Russell Crowe in the original. Two, and likely the more common one, is that many feel Mescal does not fit the description that Denzel's character constantly reiterated throughout the movie. Denzel's character says he's the human embodiment of unbridled anger and rage, and that he's this natural-born leader, an instrument of destruction, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And a lot of people felt that he didn't translate that into his performance at all. A brief scan of social media and various reviews will tell you many people thought his performance lacked charisma, that he was too quiet, and didn't bring any energy to the role, or he wasn't a believable leader. Truth be told, the only issues I had with Mescal came down to the script and not his performance. Certain beats with the character didn't land with me, and some of the dialogue felt awkward and out of place. His performance, though, I thoroughly enjoyed. My main counterpoint to the complaints that he doesn't accurately depict what Denzel is describing is this. Some of the most dangerous men and women in the world, at least in the professional sense, I'm talking the most elite combat athletes in the world, aren't these loud, aggressive, in-your-face assholes. Well, most of them aren't. They have this aura around them. They can be cocky, condescending, and all smiles, while still being some of the baddest men and women on the planet. I feel like that's what Mescal exudes in Gladiator II. He's often smiling or smirking because he welcomes death, but he's not going without a fight. He knows what he's capable of, he won't rest until he has his vengeance, and that approach worked really well for me. He wasn't some stoic Roman general, and he wasn't trying to be Maximus. I firmly believe he took his own approach to this character, and instead of delivering a performance that mirrored Crowe's or the typical bravado of a generic action star, he took the cocky, smart-ass that can back it up approach of a high-level professional athlete. I dug it. Then of course we have Pedro Pascal, who has seen a massive boom in popularity over the last few years, and rightfully so in my mind. He's also superb here. And to be quite frank, I wish we had more of him. There are a lot of characters in here, and I found he regularly got pushed to the wayside, which I was a bit disappointed by. The Twin Emperors have been another point of contention. Played by Joseph Quinn and Fred Hechinger? I'm not sure how to pronounce that entirely. Hechinger, I'm gonna say, respectively. These two little lust-fueled shits are set up as our main villains initially. They're loud, crude, over-the-top, and purposefully despicable. Though their characters completely lack depth, I still enjoyed their performances because they were just so easy to hate. I feel like that's the only purpose they truly served, but that was alright with me. Again, the movie had a lot of important characters. I'm not excusing the lazy writing, but I was okay with them not getting as much focus as, say, Commodus in the original, because it simply would have been too much, too overstuffed. So performances alone, they got under my skin, which is exactly what they were supposed to do. We also had the doctor guy, Alexander Karim as Ravi. He doesn't get a ton of screen time, but I thought he had solid chemistry with Mescal and often delivered some of the strongest dialogue in the movie. He had some pretty powerful words of wisdom, and I felt he delivered one of the better performances and was one of the better characters. The last one I'll talk about, at least more in depth, is the returning Connie Nielsen. She wasn't my favorite in the original, truth be told. She had some standout moments, no denying that, but I thought she was just fine. It's sort of the same here. She has some standout moments again, but she pops in and out of the movie, and I just never felt too much of a connection with her character. Overall, though, when it comes to the cast, my only other gripe with the original Gladiator is that I never really cared for anyone outside of Maximus and Commodus. Most of the side characters were just so forgettable. In this one at least, although it can seem overstuffed at times, had much better supporting players. I also just love the scale of this movie. Like, this feels like a big movie. It looks massive and expensive, and it is massive and expensive. It's one of those movies that genuinely begs to be seen on the biggest screen possible. It's huge. Ginormous practical sets, hundreds of extras, stunning landscape shots, epic battles, it's all here. Sure, yes, lots of CGI and blah blah blah, but look up some of the behind the scenes stuff and you'll see they still had plenty of practicality to them. It's just one of those movies you have to see in theaters. And we don't often get too many of these nowadays, a couple a year at best. And I don't mean big budget movies, we get a ton of those. But big budget movies that look and feel big budget. And you know watching them in a movie theater that this is the way it was meant to be seen. The story is fine. I won't touch on it too much because a lot of the story elements will end up in my dislikes. But that has more to do with this movie's ties to the original. The stuff that this movie had on its own, the things it kept for itself that are more original and less sequel-y, were decent. Nothing special or groundbreaking, but nothing glaringly awful either. The last thing I really enjoyed was the music, or the score, or the soundtrack, it's whatever people refer to it as these days. The original was composed by Hans Zimmer, my all-time favorite composer, who was nominated for an Oscar for his work. This time we have Harry Gregson Williams, who is no slouch either. Though I don't think his work was as strong as Zimmer's original, it was still very strong and perfectly suited this movie. Now for my dislikes, and it is very important for me to mention two things up front. One, it is imperative that you have seen the movie if you are continuing on beyond this point. Major spoilers ahead. The second point leans on the first point. I'm going to try and get through these complaints in a moderately timely fashion because there is a lot to go through. If you've seen the movie, a lot of what I am about to say should be easy to follow and pick up on for you. If you haven't seen the movie but don't care about spoilers, you should still get the general gist, but I won't be going into as much detail because, again, there's a fair bit. My first major dislike, and really there are only a few but tons of sub-points to each, is that I felt this legacy sequel clung way too much to the original, like an annoying child who won't let go of their mother's pant leg. I get it, yes, it's a sequel, but other legacy sequels handle this sort of stuff way better. Look at Top Gun Maverick, Creed, Blade Runner 2049, or Doctor Sleep. Yes, they have nods to the original, yes, they have little homages and so on, but I found Gladiator II went way above and beyond that. This movie was at its lowest and was pissing me off beyond belief when it kept constantly doing the following. Constantly retreading scenes from the original, like the secret meetings to overthrow the emperors, the betrayal when they're trying to free our main character, and multiple sections of the Colosseum battles, among others. There are constant mentions of Maximus, like literally non-stop. Characters are endlessly reciting lines straight from the original movie, some lines that don't even make sense because I was left wondering, like, were they even there for that? Could they hear that? And then the absolute cherry on top, they actually go as far as showing scenes from the original movie. And not just once, but multiple times. This shit happens so often that there are times where I was wondering if Ridley actually wanted to make a sequel or just remake the original, because it treads in both territories. Again, if it happened a few times, I get it. I don't know any legacy sequels that don't, but this felt like a disturbing overabundance. Then to add to that, it felt like there were some borderline retcons to the original movie that just kind of got under my skin and pissed me off a little too. Nothing that was straight up like, oh, Maximus actually lived, or somehow Commodus has returned. No bullshit like that. But in order for the sequel to happen, they definitely made some really interesting choices that I didn't love. The ending to the original Gladiator has always felt so bittersweet to me. Like, yes, Maximus dies from his wounds, but he died for something greater than him and got to be with his family again in the afterlife. It's tragic, but beautiful, and more importantly, hopeful. Then we skip ahead 16 years in the world of these movies for this sequel. The dream that Marcus Aurelius had for Rome did not come true, and we get no explanation as to why. Why didn't things work out? Who are these twins and how do they come into power? What happened to the people that were supposed to take charge? That dream is what Maximus died for. Everyone seemed to come together at the ending of the original, the entire crowd, all of Commodus's men, all of the gladiators, and then, like, just nothing happened. It didn't happen. The dream didn't come true. Also, why the hell wasn't Maximus buried and remembered the way he was supposed to be? The movie ends with literally everybody devastated and mourning Maximus. He gets carried away, called a hero of Rome, and then we jump to the sequel and he's buried in some secret underground spot. His name scratched off the wall, forgotten to time, like, what? And then we have basically Lucius's entire story, which I wasn't a huge fan of. The original ends with Maximus straight up saying to Lucilla's face, Lucius is safe. Lucius is safe. Well, apparently not, because we travel back to the end of Gladiator in a flashback scene in Gladiator II, where as they carry Maximus's body away, Lucilla immediately flees, plops Lucius onto the back of a horse, says he won't be safe, and then she sends him away and doesn't see him for 16 years. What the hell, man? Whose idea was this? Plus, we can also dive into the fact that it indicates that his mother, Lucilla, never seemingly put any effort into ever finding him, to the point that it took her a while to even recognize her own son. Of course, the other major elephant in the room is that Lucius is apparently Maximus's son. I rewatched the original right before I went to see this sequel. I then spent time while writing this video scouring through the internet to find any hints or indications I missed in the original that pointed to this. I mean, is it possible? Sure. It's clear Lucilla and Maximus share a romantic past, and Maximus's murdered son is clearly younger than Lucius. But still, it feels like yet another way this movie showed that it was clinging on way too tightly to the original. It's a story beat that felt super unnecessary, to me personally at least. Finally, we have arrived at my last major issue, and that is the fact that I felt this movie just had a ton of hollow writing. Hollow as in it felt weak, it felt flimsy, or rushed and lazy, or lacking in heart or depth. A few key aspects that triggered this for me were Lucius's rise among the gladiators, the fairy tale ending, Lucius's underwhelming character development, and its overall predictability. In the original, it takes a while for the other gladiators to warm up to Maximus. He's known as the Spaniard, he gains their respect in the arena, and when his true identity is revealed, he still has to give some powerful speeches for them to follow him. I don't see that at all in Gladiator II. He sort of just leads them in, they listen to him. Is it just because he's the only one with a plan? Is it the same people who are captured alongside him? Is it just because he's the only one who speaks out? Or is it just because he's the main character? The climax of this movie is insanely cliched. In fact, it's a type of ending I really don't like. We have two massive armies, literally feet away from each other, who came to battle to the death over the heart of Rome. Instead, they stand there and watch two guys duke it out until one kills the other, the one dying being a 70-year-old man, before the surviving one gives a big triumphant speech filled with heart and passion, to which the two giant armies decided not to fight and instead everyone sings Kumbaya and breaks bread. I didn't find Lucius's arc to be all that satisfying either. I feel like he forgives his mother too quickly, I feel like he forgives Pedro Pascal's General Acacius too quickly, and again, I just didn't buy him as a leader destined to guide Rome into its true glory, as per Marcus Aurelius's dream. A lot of that just felt half-baked and rushed to me. And then, really, outside of a few key moments like General Acacius' death or Emperor Geta's death, the movie is really predictable and is chocked full of conveniences, coincidences, and rehashing of previous plot lines from the first movie. There is some decent stuff in here. I don't think it was a total wash, but the writing overall was pretty weak. Like I said before, the action, scale, performances, technical work, and music really elevate the movie. But so much of the story and character work is rough. The simplest way to fix this movie, and this section will easily be the shortest, is that Ridley and his fellow writers needed to learn when to let go of the original. It's okay to have callbacks, or homages, or a couple of little wink nudge nudges. Some Easter eggs or previous plot threads picked back up, But so much of this movie's identity relies so heavily on just being the first movie again, or constantly reminding us of how amazing the first movie is. It doesn't focus anywhere near enough on being its own thing. Another easy fix would have been to just not make a sequel to Gladiator, but that's besides the point because regardless we have the movie. Legacy sequels have a pretty good reputation at this point in time. We've gotten a lot of good ones lately, some that I would say even surpass the original. There needs to be a balance between being a sequel and being its own thing. Gladiator II really struggles with this balance. My advice would have been to watch some of the best legacy sequels out there and make note of what they did. How often did they call back? What elements from the original carry forward? And most importantly, how much was new and how did they organically and naturally tie the two together? Or the legacy sequel and however many came before it. To put a close on this one, I want to reiterate that I liked Gladiator II. I thought it did a ton right, but it also got a lot wrong. I think it was good, but it could have been great. And unfortunately for me, it simply wasn't. I'll likely watch it again. I've already got my Steelbook pre-ordered. But it's destined to forever live in the shadow of its vastly superior predecessor. Now I guess we'll just have to wait and see if we ever get the third Gladiator flick that Scott says he's apparently already writing, like at this very moment. If it does see the light of day, I hope he's learned from this one. Ridley is one of the greatest movie directors who's ever lived, and he's given us some of the most influential movies of all time. But is another Gladiator the right move? Only time will tell. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my take on this particular topic. While you're at it, don't forget to let me know what you thought about Gladiator II. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you think a sequel to Gladiator was necessary? How close or how far was it from the original for you, in terms of quality, of course? Comment below and let me know. As a reminder, this is the revamped BAM2 Movies, and it is your one-stop for everything movies. Be it video essays like this one, ranking videos, top 10s versus videos, tier list videos, I have it all and so much more, along with your daily nerdy news wrap-ups, where I keep you up to date on everything movies, gaming, and TV related. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that little bell icon so you don't miss a thing. As always, folks, I thank you all so very much for watching. Stay happy, healthy, and safe out there. From myself and the rest of the BAMTube team, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, and that's a wrap.